But yeah, our 3D planets were wonderful. Jay Bondi's color, very nice, as you can see with Earth there. I always wanted a few more levels of clouds, so it looked like there were 2 or 3 levels of clouds, and not so repetitive either, but there was a lot more bigger. There were bigger fish to fry in this series, so I never really got around to that. I was going to do that into the second season, and just as I was getting to it, the show got canceled. But a very difficult show to pull off, this show. These huge planets, and these little guys on these huge planets, and flying all over the solar system. You're just breaking time and space constantly in this. And Zim, in many ways, was sort of done in a fairly realistic film style. It was, when you broke time and space, you had to do it deftly. And I think it was done pretty deftly on this. I don't want to pat myself on the back too hard. Or the board artist or anybody, but, I think it's just something you don't see on other series that much. Or if you do see it, it's done in such a cartoony fashion, like on Cartoon Network. It just doesn't have the same sort of weight as this show. It doesn't play off as something that's fairly real. That is really nice. You get that little flag smacking dib on the head and then the whole planet going. And we're, intercutting between 2D and 3D planets and characters. I told Kyle to model this after dog fights from World War II. That's where we used that spinning, and then he threw in the lip flaps. I gave him all these tapes of Wings, the old movie from the 20s with the fighter planes from World War I, and I got anything with the World War I fighter ace planes, and he used that basically to put together this sequence. Lovely shot here, this whole Ring of Saturn sequence. If we just had more money to do 3D in this, it just would have been a little bit more lush, I believe. Probably a lot more plausible, actually. This is one of the episodes that just had so many hands in it and so little time and not enough money to pull off what we needed. This episode was originally supposed to be the end of the first season. We'd gotten 6 episodes in our first batch, 6-pack, as Nick does. They would only get 6 episodes at the time, but by the end of those 6 episodes, we'd convinced them to pick up another batch of Zim so we can continue without much interruption from one series to the next and keep all the artists on and working. They ended up, we thought they were going to pick up another 7 episodes and go for a stretch of 13, so this was written by Jonan as a series capper for the first season. Ended up, though, they picked up 20 episodes. They were so enthused by what we were doing on the first 6, and this became sort of just a mid-season special, at least in Mary Harrington's eyes. Frankly, in Nick's eyes, I think it was just another episode. And while special in some regards, it's not as special as it should be. These asteroids, I always lament these asteroids. Everybody hates these asteroids. Joan and myself, Kyle, everybody who worked on the show just think they look like garbage. You can see we had to use 2D. Like there's a 2D Mercury back there. And everything animates poorly. It's just one of the worst sequences, I think, animated in the whole series. The boards weren't necessarily bad. I think the boards were pretty good for this whole thing. Just too much to animate. Again, an example of just too much animation in a show that would just choke up the abilities and the time that the animators had overseas to do a proper job. Yeah, it's just such a patchwork. Like that scene there, we had to add that scene later on. A lot of scenes that were explaining what happened in the show, what was going on, coming into the story and going out of the story, had to be added later on. So there was just many hands. So when you see that storyboard up front, storyboarders, there are just tons and tons of guys because everybody storyboarded on this thing. Everybody had their go. And it shows. But it's a very fun episode. It's nice. It's a little bit more complicated. It's one of those half hours, which Jonan only had done 1 half hour before this, I believe. So, this ending with this laughing. I don't know how this came about. I forget what happened. I forget if we didn't have enough footage or something, but you end up just with this laughing over black. It's so twisted. Another great Zim ending. Just ridicule laughter. Yeah, again with the end credits. I believe that Jonan had made this font for the end credits. It was made specifically for our show. He always wanted to be different. He did a different credit. For some reason, it always reminds me of just just a regular font, you know, a sort of a stylized font. I didn't think it was that interesting of a font. But, you know, for text this size, how interesting can you get? It almost doesn't matter what font you have, but at least we had our own font. Something that wasn't from a can, I believe.